the President of the United States has all of these levers and nobody else does. You're responsible for America. You're also responsible for the functioning of the world order in a way that is very hard to explain. You know, a pandemic disease or some massive cyber event that, you know, shuts off infrastructure, or a massive terrorist attack, or Russia invading one of its neighbors, and that's going to happen. And both in the U.S. and around the world, I think there's a lack of appreciation that there's other ways in which institutions can fill certain space that is vacated by Trump, but then there's certain space that just can't be filled, and that's basic leadership, and you're essentially making that as you go. And so when you have someone who's kind of ignoring basic norms of behavior and standards, that means that nobody else is abiding by them.
I think the degree to which the president is isolated, which is talked about, sort of vaguely known. We had the chance of working with Barack Obama. I worked with him in the Senate office and then on the campaign, and just seeing the bubble kind of close in around him. And you know, he is a very self-aware kind of guy, and went out of his way to create famously a team of rivals and to bring in his primary opponent, Secretary Clinton, as the Secretary of State, and have, you know, loudmouths like us around the table, you know, complaining about things a lot. And you know, so his way of dealing with that isolation was to try to bring some version of dissent or pluralism of view into the rooms that he was in. But even he, you know, inevitably you're incredibly cloistered. I say that because, you know, one of the correctives that one would hope would kick in here for President Trump would be his drop in approval rating, which is, you know, relatively substantial over time, unprecedented, I think, in terms of the rate of the drop. We note that the drop among Republicans, though, is much less substantial. It's still happening, slowly, and too slowly, in my view, but nonetheless. But given the isolation, the power that you have to kind of almost create like a Truman Show environment where you're surrounded by people who are just saying, "Oh, that's brilliant, Mr. President. What an amazing thought, and wow, you know, you donated to Hurricane Harvey. What a humanitarian you are." Not mentioning that we, the United States, under Trump, have attempted to cut funding for famines all around the world, and you know, that the fact that there is not a culture that seems to prize dissent or pluralism, the fact that in fact there isn't much of a system where different voices are being brought together, and on a lot of issues at least, I think on some there must be, but and the fact that if you watch Fox News only, or just have a dedicated media feed that caters to your pre-existing preferences, you can actually feel like you're doing a pretty good job if your base still loves you, and indeed if your base is even more excited about you and more roused by, you know, what from our standpoint would be some of the more disturbing, you know, things that have happened. Just again, for the public to know how isolating it is and how easy it would be to kind of choose your own wallpaper, your own art, your own, and have it all be pictures of you and your greatness, you know. And I think that's with his particular personality that I think that can appeal even more, perhaps.